of the buttons. So hi, my name's Stephen Hilt, and that's fine. I don't care. Go ahead and go get whatever you want when it comes in. It'll be in the back too. Just go get some. I think I know about 90% of the room, so it's fine. Today I'm going to talk about some legacy things that are still in use, hence the title, The 90s Called and They Want Their Technology Back. The project started with a healthcare-related research, specifically to discover potential leaks of PII. We looked at unique aspects that are rarely talked about, and we looked at new hardware to look at, new protocols to reverse and things like that. And it came fairly prevalent that was going to cost a lot, and I didn't have a lot of budget at that point in time. And I knew that doctors still carry these wonderful things around called pagers. And so that's one thing we looked at, as well as other communication paths. Has anybody out here been at a doctor's office and saw them carrying a pager? Okay. Have you ever wondered why they use them still and potentially what's being sent on those for them? Yeah, you have? Good. So we started digging into that, some history of the pagers themselves. They were launched in around the 1950s, specifically in use in hospitals in New York. At that time, it was $12 a month for about a 25-mile coverage of systems. In 1962, Bell Systems presented a radio paging system at the World's Fair in Seattle. And officially, in 2001, Motorola actually stopped making new pagers. Despite that, there are still multiple protocols in use still today. And we're going to dive into some of that here in a little bit. I grew up mainly as a kid in the 90s. I was born in the 80s, but in the 90s, we all remember that pagers used to be a status symbol of coolness. I remember when my school actually banned pagers, mostly because drug dealers were using them. Some of us really wanted to be cool, and you could actually win a free pager. Apparently, this is probably the best image I found. And we all know one of the greatest pager examples ever in pop culture. But honestly, who uses pagers now? If you remember this movie, The Hangover, he specifically asked if the Caesar's Palace was pager friendly. If you haven't, that's a good chuckle. We're going to specifically look into the doctors using pagers in this talk. I'm going to give a little bit of information at the end. It actually ended up being a larger project than I had planned because of some other information that we had seen during the analysis phase and watching of these protocols. Some of the protocols we're going to talk about, which is POCSAG. POCSAG stands for the Post Office Code Standardization Advisory Group. POCSAG pagers operate at the 512, 1200, and 2400 baud rates. The standard operates at 512. I think I have a 1200 and a 2400 pager. And later I'll show them, and if anyone has an SDR and feels adventurous and has a ham license to be able to actually transmit, which is what I'd recommend you do, not send pages. You can try to see if you can make these beep. Disclaimer, right? We're going to go in a little bit about the protocol itself. The POCSAG protocol starts with a preamble. This is something that is constantly looking for, is this preamble. This is a standardization across the world, as we found out in the research. So it is alternating ones and zeros for 576 bits. Then actual batches start with the frame synchronization code, or FSC. The FSC is a reserved word 32-bit string. It always is what you see right there. Hang on, I gotta have a drink of this. Thank you. Following the FSC, there is specifically 8 frames of the POCSAG message. Each frame is comprised of 2 code words separated by a synchronization code word. And that's just to make sure everything's on time and everything was received and how to piece things back together. Frames are broadcasted in batches, and each batch contains 8 frames. Messages can span multiple batches. Kind of what the protocol looks like itself, as I said, the preamble with the FSC, and then the 8 frames with 16 code words. The code words are the actual message themselves. And we'll actually go look into some messages here in a little bit, kind of some of the examples we've seen, and I'll actually do a live demo. During the live demo, please put your phones down, don't record, no pictures, please. Flex is the next protocol heavily used. That's actually what we'll be watching today is Flex. Flex is a high-speed paging protocol that was developed by Motorola and was designed to operate at the same frequencies as POCSAG. Flex utilizes time syncs instead of listening for a preamble. They were designed this specifically to extend the life of the battery of the pager. I have to change these out every month. You could go longer with Flex. Of course, I'm never getting pages on these, so it would be shorter if you actually got pages. I did get pages. We'll go into that later because I sent them to myself. I had to feel cool, man, you know? I always wanted a pager, so I walked around the house and, or actually at that time I was in the hotel room in another country where it's okay for me not to have a hang license and send messages. Flex utilizes, so the 128 frames in a 4-minute cycle, which makes 15 cycles per hour. So you'll see a lot of messages for the entire time span that you're listening. Most of these are going to be of sensitive nature. Some are still numeric and tone-only pages. All right, bye, guys. Increase the number of cap codes. So what happened when Flex was designed, POCSAG has a limited number of cap codes just because of the length of the cap codes. And what happened when they made Flex, they just made a longer variable so you could have more pagers. For the primary focus of this research, the majority of our pages came from US, Canada, and Japan. However, as you can see here, there is more pages let me go back first. You can see a wide variety in the US of observed frequencies that we saw the pages on. Canada was limited to 2, and Japan had 4 different ones. And you can see they're not all in the 900 megahertz range like they are in the US. Japan, we did observe some 1 or 2 messages in Germany, several in London as well. But the ones in London used the same frequencies as they did in the US. This kind of map shows kind of where we tried to observe pages. What we did in this case was work on a globally dispersed team. After a meeting we had, we sent software-defined radios home with everyone and said, hey, just see if you can see things, work your way through the waterfall, identify what the message looks like, and I'll show you what they look like here in a little bit. And just tell me if you see them, and then what we'll do is we'll work out something where you can watch it for a little bit and then tell me the types of messages that you're seeing. So that includes the Philippines, Taiwan, Japan, Spain, France, Italy, Germany, United Kingdom, US, and Canada, and Sweden as well, based off a trip I took. POCSAG and Flex both can be sniffed because they stay underneath the 1 gigahertz range. for everything I've observed. So for under $20, you can get these at Hack Shop, Amazon, and as well here. They're selling them in the vendor area. Hacker Hardware has them, I know for sure. I don't know if Hack 5 has them with them or not. But you should go pick one up if you don't have one. Yes? I'm going to go through this in a second. Yeah, it does. Any software-defined radio does, but this one obviously is the cheapest. Yardsticks work. My specific setup included a Hack RF1. Thanks, Ronnie. And a log that's a log periodic. It's an LP410. It's the 400 megahertz to 1 gigahertz Edis Research antenna. It costs more than most of the software-defined radios do. I think that's a $50 antenna. With that, I was able to capture longer messages from further away and get better clarity of the messages. As you'll see when we do the demo, there will be some decoding issues just because the signal is not very strong in here. So it helped me specifically trying to get good quality messages that we could observe and see what the true content of them possibly were, so we weren't being misled or anything like that. This one or the one before? That's a Hack RF1. Oh, the antenna, it is a LP410. And actually I use these on the other antenna as well. You can get a converter to fit that SDR. It's another cable. It costs about $5 to get, and I can't remember the exact connector types, but you can research it. If anyone knows, just shout out what types those are. So then what you start doing once you have all the software-defined radio set up, and all of this has kind of been discussed before, but I'm going to go through it so there's people in the room that kind of want to learn how to do this and look at it. It's fun. And then we'll get into some of the more interesting and newer stuff that we did in a little bit. So what you're going to look for is specifically this is a flex message that you're seeing there in GQRX, but you can also use SDR Sharp for those Windows users out there. You can do both Windows and Linux. It's not, as everyone who's done software-defined radio knows, getting GNU Radio up and running on a Mac is not the easiest task in the world. So if you can do it, you can, but I've always had nothing but problems trying to get it all, and it's not worth my time, so I usually just get a Linux box set up and build it. There's a really handy tool, as I said, this is not new stuff, this has been discussed before, and there's a lot of examples out there, and so we utilize the examples out there instead of trying to reinvent the wheel or anything like that. So under that GitHub page down there at the bottom, you'll see that there is a script called pagerrx.py. It's a GNU Radio Python script that sniffs specifically only flex, so if you're looking for POC-SAG, we'll go through that in a minute. You can sniff multiple frequencies at the same time if you use the one. You have to go and look for the specific frequencies, then hard code them in another script, and then you can run that script and it'll correlate and pull them all into the bottom waterfall and then decode them from there. On Windows, there's a handy tool called PDW. PDW supports both POC-SAG and Flex. It's easy to use. The downside of it, it'll only allow you to do one frequency at a time. So that's an example of SDR Sharp and a Flex message as well. And then what you do is then you feed it into PDW via a virtual audio cable, and you can start decoding messages. Can anybody see that, or is it fine? Too blurry? All right, sorry about that. Well, there's blurred messages in there because I can't show personal information. So there's names in there and things like that. So what you're going to see once you start decoding the messages are a bunch of different types of messages. And this is a breakdown of the data we saw. We kind of looked at some of the metadata around the messages themselves. So you don't actually store the information or anything like that. And over the span of the project, which lasted 3 months, we saw 18,291,000 alphanumeric pages, 8,500,000 tone, 7,700,000 numeric. And those are the other types. Secured's an interesting one, and binary is an interesting one as well. We didn't really dive into those too much. Secured obviously is the encrypted pages. So we didn't look into those because that wasn't the purpose of this, to determine the encryption schemes that they're using, if they're weak or strong. Why? Because everything else was still in clear text. Based off of some of the observations we had, we learned how pagers were being used in healthcare. One would be the nurse workflow management systems. This is things that tell nurses where to go, who needs what. This also includes the buttons on the side of your hospital bed. If you push that, it'll page automatically to a nurse saying you need assistance. The pharmacy and general communications. And general communications can include anything like incoming EMS to the hospital and what to prepare for condition-wise, what's the patient name, so you can get them all set in, and other things like that. And even hospital transfers, when patients are transferring hospitals, there will be a message sent out to that this patient's now being transferred to a different hospital. Inside of the nurse and workflow management, there's self-scheduling and schedule at discharge, kind of. So schedule at discharge would mean that the patient is being discharged, and the schedule around their discharge. It helps with, and the reasons why they're doing it is it's better for better preparation before the patient's arrival. It helps with reduced wait times. It improves efficiency in the admission, discharge, transfer, and housekeeping. And by housekeeping, you'll see that if you do this, and we'll see in a little bit about them dispatching somebody to clean the room after somebody leaves. All right, pizza's here. Everyone go ahead and grab a pizza. You can just pass them around, hand them out. Yeah, you can bring them up here. It's fine. Beer's in the back, pizza in the front. I know it's 6 o'clock and people are hungry, and I appreciate you coming out for my talk. So yeah, just sit them over here on the stage. You can come grab a piece too, video guy. Hang on. Let me see. No message. It's just beeping randomly. Thanks, though. That was a good try. Personalized target information. So hospital workers only receive relevant messages. This helps with the workflow management, so they're not bombarded by other things. And it also reduce costs. That's all the benefits of it. I'm not going to say workflow management is a bad thing. It's really good. However, some of the information that we've seen over the workflow management is kind of alarming and scary. I'm going to show 2 examples. These are mock-up pages of what we've seen of a couple of the vendors in specific. One of which is NaviCare. NaviCare is a clinical workflow solution, and it's provided by a company called Hillrom. And Hillrom is not at fault for any of this. They actually sell an encrypted version of this system that sends to encrypted pagers. So it comes down to a lot of its budget and what people actually are doing. As you can see here, you'll see that there is a patient with a medical record number The medical record number is the unique identifier that they moved to after your social security numbers. They used to keep and track those. For those who just came in, there's beer in the back to go with that pizza. Just go hit yourself a cup and everything will go good. So this one's a stretcher alert. The other one we've seen is CuraSpan. CuraSpan is a company that also it automates the patient transition process. There's something called InQuicker. InQuicker is used to help, as it says in its name, check in patients in quicker. A lot of it's used for transferring. It actually also sends out the URL, so if you actually have a username and password somehow obtained, you could log in and start changing some of the things for them. Another one is from EpicSys. It's a piece of software by epic.com, which works on coordinating healthcare organizations' stories and stores patient electronic records. A lot of what we've observed were email, pager gateways, bed status, and medical orders with this system. That's kind of a breakdown of the companies that we saw and the total volume we saw. Again, this is based off some of the stored metadata. Once we figured out what we were looking at, we could flag and count the numbers without actually storing all the information. When it comes to protected health information for PHI, a breakdown of some of the medical things that we saw where PHI was being distributed, again based off of recognizing names, and most of those were based off of English names. So this could be a misleading, it could be lower than what the actual number is. The email, they were stored within a forwarded email that got put into a pager. Medical terms, that's just general medical terms were included inside of the message as well. English names, there was 510,000 specific English names. There was syndromes and diagnostics, medicine on the actual FDA drug list. We'll go through some of that here in a minute as well. We'll kind of show you some of that would be, again, name, male, 29 years old, being admitted with a diagnosis of X. You see a lot of those messages are being seen. So you start learning. It's kind of scary, and the thought, like the minute I start seeing this and I look through it, I go, when I go to the hospital, which I hope I don't, will I be conscious enough to say, please don't page my information out? And if they, what would they do if I told them I didn't want the information out on the pager systems? So based off some of the diagnostics terms, we started flagging some information, kind of what we look at. Phleb, EKG, sepsis, X-ray, ortho, kidney, all those terms and the counts that we saw within the time span that we were actually looking for these. It's fairly high given the number of regions and things like that we were doing short time listening in just to verify pages, because there were several places across the country in specific. It's not just one region inside the U.S. that we were looking at. When we traveled around, we'd look at things as well. And see what we saw to see if it's a systemic problem or just a region in which I lived or was visiting that one time or things like that. And I can tell you based off of what I saw, it may not be every hospital in every town, but high probability in a major city you're actually going to see a lot of this information. Top prescriptions, Buterol, Tylenol, Zofran, insulin. Yeah. That doesn't strike Viagra. Come on, guys. Jeez. Yo, I don't think you get prescribed that in a hospital. I'm just going to say that. That's a little too much information there, Ronnie. Yeah, I don't know if nursing homes necessarily need pagers, though. There. Thanks, Eric. And so this was all seen within the pharmacy pages in specific. So we're going to go through a couple of those pharmacy pages. I actually like this sign. It was pretty funny. I found that when I was searching pharmacy signs for the slides. So one example would be morphine for the emergency department, medical record number, room number. So the thought on this that we had would be in a potential attack scenario or a misuse of this page in specific is if you were able to send a page and you knew a medical record number to a specific room number, you could potentially cause some damage and issues to the person. I don't know the back-end processes other than what I've seen via the airwaves. Is that what I've seen is that I believe this is in theory possible, that you would send this, they would possibly dispatch medicine to that room and probably charge them. I don't know about that piece either. It kind of the same one with the next two as well. Hey Jason, there's pizza up here if you want some pizza. Cool. The next one is, as I said, in somewhere in the country. I won't say exactly where, or not in the country, in the world. Organ donors was the highest thing we saw. So once the morgue had the cadaver, what organs were up for donation came around. So this is donor number at the donor hospital. This one would be a female, age 49. Again, this is a mocked message, not a copied message. So we just kind of put those numbers in there, but it's like what we would have seen. The offer, and this is for patients, the donor for the patient, and the date of birth of the next patient. And we talked about, Eric mentioned earlier, nursing homes. However, there is home care. We did see some pages that alluded to a home care solution system. This one would be Goldschmidt, patient name, date of birth, and the actual phone number for a pharmacist for medicine at CVS or Walgreens or anything. Please call the patient, has horrendous cough, needs a steroid, not prednisone. So they're saying that this patient needs different medicine. One of the surprising things that we saw was the things when people actually die in hospitals. It's a page called Death Notify. I'll show an example here in a second, but I wanted you to take this in and see all the glory of this meme that I found. Does anybody know where Justin Els is? So this is an example of a death, two different notices. This is an example of what we saw in which they were actually, a manual message went through about the family for a guy is waiting in the waiting area, and their name and phone number, and then the death notification as well for another person that comes through. We witnessed that there are multiple types of messages notifying of death, and also dispatching to send somebody to speak with the family about somebody who just died. Does anybody have any questions or anything like this at this point in time? So I'm going to go into something pretty crazy real quick. And it's going to be blurry because the screen sucks or whatever, and my image was blurry. Yeah? You can't, so the way pagers work, they're a broadcast-based system, so once one's sent out, you can't like intercept it and make it not go, but what you could do is send one that said something else right after it, or keep upping how much prednisone they need, just keep dispatching it to them, or change it all up, or say it's you and you want more morphine. because you're in pain and no one's giving it to you.
Not everyone can get that, right?
No, it's specific to the cap codes, and I'll go through that in a second. I should have done it back in the beginning, but the cap codes are a thing that uniquely identifies each pager. These run on the same frequency, different baud rates, but if they even were the same baud rates, these two pagers would never get the same messages unless you send it to each one separately. So outside of the US, some of the messages we saw were fairly cryptic, and luckily I was nice enough to put the string of bytes there, or this would come through in a numeric page, and it's 4010494069163710104840. What that actually translates to, as we figured out via some research and a lot of help from some of my Japanese coworkers who can actually read Japanese and I can't. So that actually translates to English. It's test alert, and it uses a grid chart. So 40 is 4 and 0 would be a T. So, and 10 E, and so on and so forth. And there's actually kanji in there. So if you started looking into it and started kanji, this is just an example of test alert. We saw lots of these in Japan. It turns out Japan uses a lot of it for emergency issues, for public notification, things like that, that they'll broadcast out messages. At this point in time, I'm going to switch over to doing a demo, so if you can go ahead and stop the recording for just a minute, please. Which is, there you see things not in the region, because they're still utilizing the nationwide pager systems. The nationwide pager systems, again, it's a broadcast-based system, so it never knows where that pager is like a cell phone, so it goes to every tower and gets sent out. So it's a fully broadcast system. Good? Okay, cool. What we're going to do now is we're going to talk about actually spoofing the pages. There's, again, is the two cap codes, the baud rates, and the frequencies. There's a tool out there called GR Mix-a-Lot. It's, again, links at the bottom. Really simple GNU radio flow there. As you can see, it's pretty much just POCSAG is built into GNU radio, so it's really easy to go ahead and just send messages to POCSAG. Flex a little more difficult, but you can do it. But for the sake of this, just kind of showing that we can send pages, and this is being the easiest manner. So what we're going to do here is this is my two pagers. I'm going to go ahead and play it, and you can watch it. So they're going to shut off. I'm going to show you that where I'm sending these pages is in dead space here in 1 second. So you see there's no messages or anything like that, nothing around those frequencies, which is 9314875. There was the first message. We'll scroll back, we'll swing back over here in 1 second and show you that first page. See the pager on the right lit up. And then the page, that's the second page. Different baud rate, as you can tell, it's a little white. And then we're going to go ahead and show the messages. Yeah, those are my hands, my chubby fingers. Thanks. And it's just that simple. I sent messages to the pager that could say anything. My original test said hack the planet. Grand Central, hack the planet. Yes?
So you said the Motorola's not a kitchen anymore, like you asked, like who does, like what are the hospitals and things that do from like huge stocks?
Yeah, you can buy used ones on eBay. And you can specifically specify the range while you're looking for them and which frequency to go based off of the systems that you have will work. And there are companies that are making them. I just know that Motorola isn't. These are Motorola pagers, probably circa 2001, right before they stopped. But there are systems out there that are still making pagers, and they're utilizing old pagers. Later, man. Thanks for coming. So once I was spoofing pages, I also wanted to show that the same thing applies. I can sniff the same pages that I just sent. First example is again what I said when I sent Hack the Planet. So as you can see in this message here, I send Grand Central Hack the Planet, and you can also see that. So that's the multi-mon NG that I was talking about earlier, and how you can use RTL-FM, pipe that through multi-mon NG, and you can decode POC/SAG and Flex. And then there on the bottom is me with PDW, showing the exact same. First message is the same, and then I sent a spoof, and there on the bottom I sent a spoof that Dr. FTR, I work for the forward-looking threat research team at Trend Micro. We need morphine in room 42, and then FTR rules the world, the message that you actually saw get sent. If it's this easy just to spoof pages, and we're just sending them out, now granted, we all have ethics and we wouldn't do this, but a criminal would, especially if they wanted extra drugs or knew somebody in the hospital, or as we were mentioning earlier, you can see things like SMS to pagers. Maybe you send a message to a doctor and tell them there's an emergency and they need to leave the room, that they need to go take care of something. Or even worse, you send out and you learn all the CAP codes that are in the region or being utilized inside of one hospital, and you send in like a bomb threat page that everyone needs to leave the hospital. No. Because you're on the receive only, you can't go and start figuring out the signal strengths or anything like that. I'm sure you could, but I don't have the equipment to do that. You'd have to talk to a 3-letter agency. Yes?
So you're using your own SDR?
Yeah, in that case it would have been Edis Research, had a B210 with that same log parabolic antenna. I also have a standard antenna for it. Yeah, but you can do it. Yeah. Yep. So, and you'd be surprised how much some of those SDRs, how high they can start transmitting to. Again, we can send pages. I can send anything I want, and we should meet in Grand Central and Hack the Planet. Potential attack scenarios, I mentioned a lot of these already. You can declare emergencies, intercept calls, possibly steal a dead person's identity, send pages to the pharmacy, move patients within facilities, say you don't want them next to you anymore because they smell real bad. That's the most benign one. But you can start playing with your imagination and figuring out potential malicious things you can do. Solution, stop using pagers. But if you can't, move to the encrypted pagers. Or in Canada, for example, they don't broadcast the name. They only send out the medical record number. So there's another layer of obscurity that you need to figure out, that it's not a person's name. But even then, you can start finding out things, or if you knew your own medical record number or somebody else's medical record. But it makes it a little more complex. So I'm over time anyway, so if anybody got any questions, shoot them out. It's Martin Bos's tattoo. Any questions? I think we kind of just went through it. Yeah, what's up?
Missing a lot of what I wanted to ask. Are your pages totally anonymous and untraceable?
My pages, those ones that I sent were not in the U.S., but yes. Other than the FCC can track transmits, but they have to be looking for it. No. Yes. I don't know. It depended on vendors when I looked at them. Some were using AES, some were just triple DES, some quoted proprietary encryption. We didn't really dive too much into that specific, but if you're interested in it, they usually had their manuals or at least sales sheets available on their websites. Any other questions? Nope. Well, thanks. Looks like we plowed out some pizza, had some beer, all was good.